Some heroes must give it their all, while others are so powerful they actually need to hold back. You've probably heard of Omega level, but did you know that there is a tier even beyond that? Gambit doesn't often get as much love in the comics when it comes to what he is capable of, but he is actually capable of quite a lot. A lot of people don't think of him as being super powerful, and the reality is, it's because he's actually actively holding back pretty much all of the time. Gambit actually reached out to Mr. Sinister about helping him nerf his powers because then they would be more easy to control, which is something that he was worried about, so he has been holding back for a long time in the comics because of this. Gambit also learns of his alternate self, New Sun, and is basically warned of what would happen if he tapped into his full potential. Spoiler, it ain't good. New Sun hails from a world that was destroyed because of how powerful he was. Vulcan is pretty insanely powerful and in a dangerous way too, because he's so capable of evil due to being manipulated during his time in the Vault. In fact, in Empire we saw what was probably only a small fraction of what his darker side was capable of when he ran into the Kotati while out for a walk on the blue area of the moon, where the Summers house was located during the Krakoan era. He attempted to deal with the situation peacefully when he approached them, initially anyways, showing mercy, but when provoked, his darker side was unleashed, causing him to kill everyone save one member of the Kotati, who was basically left traumatized, uncontrollably uttering the word Krakoa on repeat. Holding back is a huge part of who this character is, or who this character has been for a long time. We're talking about Gentle. Now I love Gentle and I think that he deserves more love in the comics, which is why I am super happy to be featuring him on this list, although at least he's gotten more to do recently with him appearing alongside T'Challa in the Black Panther series, where he was revealed to actually have been working undercover for a long time with the King and for Wakanda. That's a whole thing. I'm not super well versed in it because I need to go and read that Black Panther series, but honestly, a lot of it seemed pretty cool. Gentle has vibranium tattoos which actively help him to control and at times restrain his super strength and super muscly powers. Also, they look really cool. It's unknown just how powerful Gentle could be, though it is believed the level of strength he is capable of could be in fact limitless, and that he could even hold his own against the likes of the Hulk. Gentle initially held back on using his powers because of trauma, which manifested in the form of a fear of his powers and physical pain whenever he used them. However, it was later revealed by Jean Grey that this weakness was actually a psychological barrier in his mind as opposed to being legitimately tied to his mutant powers themselves. She helped him to emotionally heal and recover from this, removing this weakness from him. Still though, he probably holds back a lot because he is really strong. I mean, what can I say about Hope that you don't already know? Hope Summers is definitely one of the most powerful mutants around in the comics, and the X-Men were fortunate for a time to have her on the roster. Hope's powers allow her to take at peak mastery the powers of any mutants that are within her vicinity. She is only limited by a certain range in terms of her ability to adopt one's powers. She doesn't drain the powers of her target, and she's instantly able to master any ability, any power set that she takes on. Honestly, it's pretty wild. She's also literally mutant Jesus, being the baby everyone fought over in X-Men Second Coming. Hope isn't a Summers by birth, but she was adopted by the biological son of Scott Summers and Madeline Pryor, and the adopted son of Jean Grey, Cable, aka Nathan Summers. Storm is a literal goddess in the comics. There are many times when, like her friend Rogue, if she simply chose to just not hold back, she could just do some serious damage to her enemies. However, Storm is a hero and as such often prefers to maintain a sense of restraint and spare her enemies from a fatal demise when she can. Storm not only holds back when it comes to her powers, but also when it comes to her fighting prowess as well, as she is also an extremely skilled physical combatant. Rogue has since come much more into her own in the comics, with her gaining more control over her powers, meaning that she is no longer as burdened with having to worry about hurting those she cares for by accident. Rogue's powers allow her to absorb the powers and even memories of others through touch. She can take on multiple powers at once, but the setback is that her touch can also drain the life force of energy of whoever she makes contact with. Now it turns out that the loss of control of her powers came from a very real place for most of us, her own fear of being close to people, of intimacy, and of acceptance. For Rogue, she just had to make the choice to just accept herself and not be afraid, and it was through that basically therapeutic work that she was then able to take control of her abilities fully. So if you've seen her making out with Gambit a ton in the comics, that's why, and that's how she's able to do that. And if you see Rogue coming your way, you do not have to be afraid, unless of course you are one of the baddies and then you should be very afraid. Yep. Rachel Summers is definitely one of the most powerful mutants and X-Men members that we have. She is the alternate reality daughter of Cyclops and Jean Grey, who of course are known to make powerful children together across the multiverse. Hence also why Sinister is so obsessed with the two of them getting together. Rachel is one of the chosen hosts of the Phoenix Force, and even without the Phoenix is extremely powerful, being an immensely powerful telepath, telekinetic, and chronokinetic. She can read time, skip through it, travel to alternate timelines and dimensions, and even manipulate time. Yeah, she's pretty powerful. She also happens to be immune to timeline alterations as well, and is unique in that she is the only version of herself throughout the entire multiverse. Even another Rachel Summers is not technically considered an alternate of Rachel as such. Even if she had the same name and kind of the same vibe, Rachel is 100% her own. She has no other versions of herself, which also makes her uniquely well suited to time travel. Less paradoxes, you know what I mean? Did you know that Spider-Man was an X-Man? Yeah, he was. Even though he's not really a mutant, but a mutate. Kinda makes you feel bad for Deadpool, doesn't it? Who always wants to join in on all this mutant fun and games, but is so often shafted by them because, well, he's Wade, and he's pretty annoying. Sorry, Wade. Spider-Man ended up joining the X-Men in the wake of Wolverine's death, as Storm had found papers regarding an idea to have him join the team and teach his own special class of mutants. As such, he joins the X-Men in Spider-Man and the X-Men issue number 1. There are multiple times in the comics where Peter has actively been shown to pull his punches for fear of doing some serious damage to his foes. If Spider-Man weren't holding back, he could likely kill some of the people he comes up against with one well-placed punch, and there are many stories that have kind of talked about that. Well, we never really get to know Miranda's codename, or even, honestly, her full name. We just know her as Miranda. She was given her very own mutant class. That is how great her powers are considered to be. Beast had to create a whole new classification of power levels just for her. She only appears in the Worst X-Men Ever limited series, which by the way is a really great read that I would recommend you check out if you haven't already. Miranda here is shown to have reality warping powers, but ones that don't adversely affect space, time, or the multiverse. Anything in her reality or the fabric of the continuum, which is pretty insane, because every other reality warper has some of that to some extent, pretty much. Beast decided to give her the new classification, which would sit above Omega with the name of Omicron, just because he thought that was one of the most ominous sounding letters of the Greek alphabet. I think my favorite thing is that although in this universe Miranda was beyond Omega level and could have fixed the world in a snap, she understood why the balance of everything had to be maintained, and so instead she chose to hold back instead of just simply using her powers to completely change the world for better, or, you know, perhaps accidentally for worse, as so many reality warpers sometimes do. Nate Grey has to be one of the most powerful mutants that I know, and is likely also one of the most powerful mutants to have ever existed. He is believed to be the perfect genetic offspring of Jean Grey and Scott Summers. Yeah, another Jean Grey Scott baby. Hailing from the Age of Apocalypse reality where he was genetically engineered by his world Sinister. You know Sinister, in any universe he's pretty much obsessed with creating the perfect mutant, which in this case is believed to be X-Man. Nate would be raised not by his genetic parents, but by the AOA version of Forge, who is basically his adoptive father here. Nate has both fought on the side of his own reality's X-Men, but while he's also capable of traveling to other dimensions and realities in addition to manipulating time as well, Nate has also fought alongside the X-Men of Earth 616 too, even joining the team in 1999 in Astonishing X-Men issue number 1.
Scheming like a criminal ever since her debut, Lady Mastermind. Lady Mastermind is known for creating hyper-realistic telepathic illusions. It's pretty scary. In Extreme X-Men 9, she created an illusion in Heather Cameron's head that Heather was stabbed, and Heather started bleeding through her pores. There was never any wound, but her shirt was soaked through. Lady Mastermind also convinced Heather's dad that he was drowning, causing him to suffocate in a room full of air. People will believe the illusions even if it comes with major changes in the environment. It doesn't matter, they feel that real. I mean, I can't really blame the people caught on the wrong side of her wrath. In the Marvel Universe, getting randomly teleported is not that surprising probably. She can also make the illusions exactly your worst nightmare because she can read your mind a little bit. She can use her limited telepathic powers to camouflage herself and others, or make herself and others appear as someone else. In X-Men Volume 2, 193, she does this and makes an X-Men unknowingly eliminate their teammate. Even if you knock her out, the illusions will sometimes still stick around, so that's a lot of examples of her doing bad bad things, maybe needed to hold back a little, but she is now affiliated with the X-Men, which has tamed her. Coming in hot with powerful telepathic abilities, a god complex, and a tendency to cause problems is Game Master. He has powerful telepathic abilities, so powerful he needs cybernetic implants to help him control his power. And that power, what does he do with it? Well, he helped run a competition for mutants to fight each other to win a prize. It's very Hunger Games core. How does a person even end up here? Games Master got to this point because he discovered that if he's able to really focus on a distraction, then his mental load would be easier to carry. Knitting is too hard, and the Hunger Games is apparently the perfect distraction. The weight he is trying to distract himself from is hearing the thoughts of every human on the planet. Almost 8 billion people's thoughts are running through his head 24/7. That sounds like a nightmare, and that's a lot, even for the most powerful telepath. No wonder he acts a bit unhinged. Games Master can manipulate many minds at once. He even claims he can control the whole world, but luckily he has held himself back from doing that. Boundaries. The guy is smart but lacking in skill. He manifested his abilities at an early age and got no help with them, so he needs a bit of training to really get himself under control. But even the way he is, he's pretty powerful as an unskilled mutant, so while the X-Men consider him a foe, they should maybe hold off on training. So while the X-Men do not consider him a foe anymore, they should maybe start training him to control himself. He does join the mutant nation of Krakoa in the end and hopefully start attending some classes. Angel used to be pretty basic in the mutant world. He could fly. He got his name from the angel wings on his back. The wings are really strong, so if he smacked them together, it would create powerful wind blasts. He could also just smack you with the wing. That would also hurt. Pretty soon though, Angel got an upgrade and a bad side, becoming Archangel. Archangel wants death and destruction, so Angel really had to get that in check so he could stay with the X-Men. Though it is bloodthirsty, the new Archangel side is what I consider an upgrade because it gave Angel new powers. One particularly useful one is healing blood. If someone gets hurt, all you need is a little bit of Archangel's blood and you'll be fine. Angel also got a hypersonic scream, a loud scream, basically so loud it can cause internal bleeding and break the sound barrier. You can wound Angel, but his healing blood is due to a healing factor, so if he gets wounded, he just heals. There was a moment in his Archangel journey where he became a horseman of the apocalypse, as one does. He was Death, the angel of death, so ominous. It was during that time he got his techno-organic wings. Though the wings are metal, they eventually molt and he gets his feathers back. They're also super strong and have stuff you'd want in a fight. Even if Angel lost his wings, he could still hold his own. He's good at hand-to-hand combat and sword fighting, and he's rich, which in today's economy, that's a superpower. He owns the company Worthington Industries, a Fortune 100 company. Zorn famously went from Magneto's disguise to an actual character because he was so cool. Zorn also pretty famously destroyed the X-Men and part of a major city once. This retcon has had fans up in arms since it happened for a number of reasons. When Zorn was Magneto, it made sense that he would target the X-Men like that. He's got a lifelong feud with them at that point. But then when that was retcon because the editors liked Zorn and Magneto needed to return, suddenly it was just this guy attacking the team. It lost some of its bite because there suddenly wasn't this lifelong feud fueling the fire. Zorn did have a bone to pick, but did he really need to do all that? The reason given in canon for his absolutely off-the-rails choices was that he was under the control of Sublime, and Sublime wanted Zorn to cause as much chaos as possible so mutants got a really bad rep. Then when it was time to convince the world mutants were bad, it would be a lot easier. Makes sense, but even in that context, Zorn, chill please. Innocent civilians, really big thumbs down all around, buddy. Mimic deserves so much more than he gets. Maybe he shouldn't hold back so much and he would get some proper mainstream recognition. Mimic can stay himself and yet gain the powers of whoever he wants, whoever is around him. And if he is around you long enough, he can have the powers forever. His body just adopts them. His mimic abilities are for anything, not just mutant mimicking. He's mimicked athletic skills on a football field before. If he stands next to Celine Dion, I'm sure we get a great cover of My Heart Will Go On. Most of the company Mimic keeps at this point though, they're mutants and other superheroes, so he's usually mimicking superpowers. He's hung around the original X-Men so much that he permanently has their powers, so that's Cyclops' Optic Blast, Beast's Strength, Jean Grey's Telekinesis, Iceman's Ice Controlling, and, until he cut off the wings, Angel's Winged Flight. He had to cut off his wings because Angel lost his wings and needed a new set, but the situation does cement how powerful Mimic's mimicking is. He was able to create wings that were so close to the actual Angel's wings that he could just donate them to Angel. Mimic could easily become the smartest person on Earth very quickly, or the strongest, or the most powerful just by standing next to someone long enough. That is so cool and scarily powerful. Franklin doesn't hold back anymore. There is nothing to hold. The poor kid has drained his powers and then lost his mutant status, but he wasn't ever a mutant to start with. It's complicated. Franklin is the son of the Fantastics and was once thought to be an Omega level mutant until it was discovered his powers were so powerful it made him seem like a mutant, but he really wasn't. Still, when he wasn't drained of power, the kid could create whole universes, and his powers might even be on equal ground with Celestials should he use them fully. Galactus feared Franklin, literally evacuating the premises just to not fight him. Eventually, Franklin did get his hands on Galactus and gain control over him, using him to demolish 2 mad Celestials. This was done by Franklin combining his abilities from Franklin's past, present, and future, so adult Franklin was the one doing all this, which is good. A teenager should not be in that situation. Franklin is capable of time travel and telepathy and illusions and duplication and literally so much more. The Fantastics definitely had their hands full with him. This suggestion was taken from the comments of part 1, so thank you. Colossus can be a gentle giant when it comes to his little sister. Take Uncanny X-Men 153, the bedtime story comic for example. He loves her a lot, so mess with her and he loses it a bit. That's really not something you want from Colossus. You want the guy to keep a hold of himself. He was also destined to destroy Breakworld as foretold by an ancient mural there, so keeping his anger in check is in their best interest. But if he's capable of destroying one world, he could probably break others, so it's in everyone's interest to keep the steel giant on their side. Firestar is next, and this woman has carried our last mutant up in the air before, all 500 pounds of him, quite quickly. It actually hasn't even been established what Firestar's absolute fastest speed is, but it's gotta be speedy. Her powers are mainly microwave based, not like the food serving thing, but actual waves. She taps into the Earth's electromagnetic field and converts it into the microwaves. Those microwaves can be used in a bunch of different ways, like flight for example. She could use it to project energy at someone. If she focuses, she can even cause things to explode. She can mess up frequencies and electronics. Overall, she is very warm. She was once thrown through a brick wall, but literally went through it. The bricks melted so fast, it was like she never actually touched it. Overall, very cool powers, but very dangerous too. Since Firestar draws her powers from the electromagnetic field of the planet she's on, this case Earth, if she draws too much accidentally or purposefully, she could potentially destroy the planet. To stop this from happening, she does usually hold back, but when she's in space, that's not a concern. That means she gets more powerful. In reality though, she's just not holding herself back out of fear, so space-powered Firestar is the closest thing we have to full-power Firestar. Mystique has always been that girl, but just recently has it been revealed that she's more powerful than anyone could have guessed, and is even capable of being that guy. Mystique for a long time was a shapeshifter, but it's been recently established that she is actually a gene shaper. It's a subtle difference, but shapeshifters typically will just take on a person's appearance. Gene shapers become that person, and when they are shifting, they're shifting their DNA, it will rewrite itself. That's how Mystique was able to become Nightcrawler's father, not mother. The Gene Shaper revelation was revealed in X-Men Blue Origins 1. The issue also featured a note from Dr. Nemesis that basically said that Raven was way more powerful than she was letting on, and maybe even more powerful than she knew. And she's pretty darn powerful already, so all the destruction she has caused, it would have been way worse had she known the extent of her capabilities. In addition to the new Gene Shaper thing, she has accelerated healing. She can become immune or simply resistant to diseases, making a lot more sense now that we know she can alter genetic code. She's pretty good at stopping telepathic intrusion. She's a good shot, trained in martial arts, and has a solid Duolingo streak with at least 11 languages in her roster. I will admit, I took this last X-Men also from the commenter on part 1 of this video. Thank you to that person, and you are right, Cable is the king of holding back. He is an alpha level mutant in the eyes of Krakoa, but in the eyes of other Marvel characters, he's actually considered an Omega level mutant. As long as you understand that he is super powerful, you're good. Cable's telepathic abilities are where he shines. He even declared himself the most powerful telepath in the world, before his powers burned out, that is. Cable is known for jumping across time and for the techno-organic virus that he got when he was just a baby. The virus caused a large part of his body to turn into cyborg parts. His regular human side is already very strong and powerful, so the cyborg part is that, but even greater. And like the commenter from part 1 shared, if Cable doesn't hold back, the virus in his body could make him capable of unleashing power on par with X-Man or other X-Men or even his evil clone clone because everyone in the Marvel Universe seems to get one of those at some point. We should feel lucky that Cable is held back by being a good guy. His clone Strife is known for going out and generally causing destruction. That could be Cable, but he's nice or nicer.
Number 10. Dr. Fate. So here's the thing with Dr. Fate. Typically the character is not just one character, but two inhabiting one body. This is what the Helm of Fate actually represents. The connection of Dr. Fate to Naboo, the Lord of Order, which is where Kent Nelson originally got his powers and his knowledge from. Of course, Kent Nelson also has powers separate from his appearance as Dr. Fate. He is, after all, a supremely skilled and knowledgeable magic user in his own right, thanks to years of training. However, with Dr. Fate really in essence being kind of two people combined, the Lord of Order Naboo and Naboo's host, in this case we're talking about Kent Nelson, these two do not always agree on how best to deal with an enemy or potentially catastrophic events. Case and point in Justice League Dark when Naboo takes control of Kent's body against his will, only for him to later be freed of Naboo's influence and refuse to basically use the power of the helm, instead choosing to keep Naboo trapped within it, because Kent knows, well, if I try to work with Naboo, I'm probably gonna get possessed again. This guy's kind of being a little evil right now. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that subscribe? I know there are many of you that are not subscribed, so do it. Click the button. Do it. Number 9. Cyborg. In the Doom Patrol series, we literally saw just how powerful Cyborg is when it comes to using him as a pawn and manipulating him into attacking his own father. Mr. Nobody managed to trick Cyborg and ended up showing just how much potential he has when it comes to his ability to do harm. Cyborg actually would make probably a pretty great villain, to be honest, which is creepy. Cyborg in general usually has to be careful when fighting against enemies because he is super strong. In the comics and other media, he has also been portrayed as being in essence a master hacker, and as a result constantly decides to hold back rather than, just use his hacking skills to manipulate the world, which would kind of be, and sometimes that would be a little insidious. In the Snyder Cut, it's even alluded to that Cyborg is actually one of the most powerful people in the Justice League, with him being able to control all the banks and bank accounts of the world if he wanted. That's just part of what we get to see. Here he is shown as pretty much having access to everything technological, but being someone who chooses to use this power reluctantly and responsibly, because he is a hero. Honestly, when it comes to powerhouses in the comics who are capable of doing more, but choose to hold back, knowing that unleashing the full force of their power could be pretty dangerous, Cyborg is actually one of the best examples, even though some might not fully comprehend or accept him as the powerhouse he is. But Vic definitely deserves that. Number 8. Sunspot. Sunspot is one of my favorite heroes when it comes to those who have to hold their power back. I mean, at one point, his power was at risk of killing him, guys. After being shot in the head, he was forced to wear a headband to help regulate his powers, as he lost control of them, somewhat, and left unchecked they could easily kill him. Sunspot's headband would regulate his powers, thereby protecting Roberto da Costa from being burned up from the inside out by literally holding back and balancing his powers for him. And we see just how necessary this is when Bobby, who at the time was known as Citizen V, decides to throw caution to the wind, removing his regulator headband to prove that he is indeed one of the most powerful mutants to have ever existed, while also obviously fighting to save the world by using his power to keep the world engine running, putting his life on the line. Number 7. Sentry. EJ Graham in the comments for the part 1 of this video was considering suggesting Sentry for a potential part 2. Ultimately though, he decided against suggesting that perhaps Sentry doesn't hold back, and instead often simply gets written out of Marvel Comics because he's too overpowered. I would argue that him both being written out / killed off because he's too powerful and him having to hold back because he is too powerful are actually both true. Sentry does every now and then go in guns a-blazing, with him ripping people in half kind of becoming a weird, every so often semi-regular occurrence. However, I will also say that more often than not, we've actually seen Sentry hold back his powers and express restraint, especially when you consider he agreed to wipe his own mind and the minds of everyone else on Earth of his superheroic existence just to protect them from the evil villain, the Void, who is basically Sentry's villainous alter ego he was made to believe that he'd always had after being brainwashed by Mastermind. Number 6. Wonder Woman. We have seen what happens when Wonder Woman stops holding back, and it's not pretty, I'm gonna tell you that. Whether we are talking about emotionally with her giving into a well of despair, or physically with her causing the mass destruction of the entire planet as a result of a fight against Superman. In Tales from the Dark Multiverse, War of the Gods, her giving in emotionally resulted in her being overtaken by Hecate, who she had previously trapped in her subconscious, initially preventing Hecate from possessing her. However, after the destruction of Themyscira and the death of her sisters, her fellow Amazons, and her mother Diana ends up losing hope and thereby loses control over herself. In Wonder Woman Dead Earth, we learn of how Wonder Woman giving into her rage and removing her bracelets, which in this story hold back Diana's power, results in the destruction of the planet. Even in the main continuity, it's actually been suggested that Diana is much more powerful than she lets on, and this is likely because without holding back, she could actually cause major damage and destruction to the world around her and people in it. Number 5. Storm. Storm has demonstrated restraint on multiple occasions when facing her enemies, and has proven time and time again how much of a badass she is in the comics. Recently, during the AXE Judgment Day event, Storm was one of the few people to survive Uranus' initial attack on planet Arakko, formerly known as Mars. This went down when Storm was the acting regent of Arakko, the planet and nation's leader. Storm is the only person I believe to have actually sat on both the Great Ring of Arakko and the Quiet Council of Krakoa at the same time, and she made this work for actually a pretty good while. In order to get her seat, she actually had to defeat the previous regent who held the seat of All Around Us, that's the name of the seat that she holds, Nameless, the shapeshifter queen. While Storm bested Nameless, she refused to kill her opponent, preferring to hold back and allow Nameless to live, forcing Nameless to actually curse Storm and choose to take their own life rather than simply admitting defeat. Number 4. Black Bolt. Black Bolt is a character who is so powerful, half the time just the threat of him using his power is enough to stop those who oppose him from basically messing with him. Black Bolt's power first manifested at birth, as his mother and father exposed him to Terrigenesis before he was even born as part of an experiment to see, kind of what that would do. This, along with his immensely powerful genetic makeup, resulted in him being born as one of the most powerful Inhumans ever. Black Bolt would end up being kept in isolation for most of his childhood and early life as a result of the sheer power that he possessed. He literally couldn't even just run around and be a kid. No, too powerful. His powers are related to the speech center of his brain and his ability to harness electrons. Using both, he possesses an extremely powerful voice, with just a whisper often being enough to harm those who stand against him. As it stands, Black Bolt usually communicates telepathically, although not psionic himself, or more often with his own specific form of sign language. Number 3. Icon. Icon has been shown to be even more powerful than Superman on occasion, with Superman at one point remarking that being hit by Icon was the hardest that he'd ever been hit. The two have fought multiple times against one another in the comics, even way back when Clark had his long hair. Oh, I miss his long, luscious locks. At one point, they end up fighting in the 2006 Justice League of America series in issue 28, but here, it's all a show. So there's no real victor since they are kind of just pretending to fight here. And we have to expect that Icon was holding back somewhat here. Sure, he wanted to make the fight appear convincing, but he didn't actually intend to hurt Superman, which implies that he wasn't even using his full force here, as he likely wouldn't need to go hard to sell a fight to onlookers. With that reasoning, not only have we literally seen Icon hold back, but it also means that the hero, now from DC's Milestone imprint, might actually have to hold back even more than some of the most powerful heroes from DC's mainline, which is pretty wild to consider. Number 2. Magic. Magic is a hero that often gets left out of lists like this, so I want to thank Michael Sheehan in the comments from our part 1 video for suggesting that I add her to this video. Truly, she is a superhero who constantly has to hold back, lest she threaten the existence of the world and possibly the universe. Magic isn't just a straight up hero, she's complicated. She also has a darker side known as Darkchild that she often has to keep contained. And that's what I love about her complexity. She also has a ton of trauma in her life that she constantly has to confront and deal with. Number 1. Dr. Manhattan. Dr. Manhattan has to be one of the ultimate heroes for needing to hold back. Dr. Manhattan is insanely powerful, and perhaps this is why he generally prefers to stay out of the affairs of mortal beings. Well, that and the fact that he likely doesn't much care for, humans. He is a reality warper, and in fact is one of the folks, I would argue, in current lore, the main folk, responsible for the New 52 continuity reset. As such, Dr. Manhattan constantly holds back, despite the fact that he could reset the universe on the daily, destroy it, or completely fix everything. Instead of doing any of this stuff though, he prefers to take more of a watcher role, only getting involved when he really feels it's necessary or has some strong desire to do so, which isn't very often.
Number 10. Daredevil. When Matt Murdock was a child, he was hit by a truck that was carrying toxic radioactive isotopes. He got some gunk in his eyes, and as a result, he was blinded. But this being Marvel Comics, the radiation heightened his other senses to the point that he was given his trademark radar sense, which allows him to do sick flips and fight crime as Daredevil. Daredevil is quite a religious fellow who also believes in letting the legal system do its work as much as possible, so he has a pretty strict stance against killing people. believing that the criminals he fights should be taken to prison and left alive. This has put him at odds with other more lethal characters like the Punisher, who thinks that the only good criminal is a dead criminal. But despite the fact that he is often tempted, Daredevil holds back, using his ninja skills to brutalize and maim, but not to kill. This self-imposed rule has been broken a couple times, such as when he was possessed by a demon, when he was forced to shoot a helicopter pilot who was using a minigun to brutalize Hell's Kitchen, and when he attempted to shoot the Punisher, when Frank had tied him up and taped a gun to his hand. But once again, these are pretty extreme situations where he didn't really have any other options. Number 9, Professor X. Charles Xavier is the leader of the X-Men and the founder of a school for gifted youngsters where he trains young mutants to control their powers so that they don't accidentally destroy buildings on the regular. He is an extremely powerful mutant, being able to read and control people's minds. In theory, he could force anyone to do pretty much anything he wants. Thankfully, Xavier shows a decent amount of restraint with his powers, and usually makes a point of not reading his students' minds without permission, and rarely using them to make people act against their nature. For example, considering that governments in the Marvel Universe are consistently passing anti-mutant legislation, it would be very tempting to control the responsible politicians' minds to force them not to vote for such measures. But he doesn't do stuff like that. Sure, he has a bit of a god complex, and has a history of wiping people's minds when he screws up, or dampening Jean Grey's powers until he feels she's ready for them. But overall, he shows a lot of restraint. Outside the comics, in the X-Men 2 movie, we even see that while using Cerebro, Professor X could kill every mutant or human in existence simply by concentrating. So, yeah, he's holding back. Number 8, Batman. Batman is similar to Daredevil in the regard that he is one of the most gifted martial artists in the world and has extensive knowledge on how to handle any situation. Like Daredevil, he also has a strict moral code that prevents him from killing any of the criminals he faces, despite the fact that he certainly could with ease. For example, in Book 1 of The Dark Knight Returns, Batman is fighting against a group of thugs, and in his inner monologue, we can see him playing out strategies, saying, "There are 7 working defenses from this position. 3 of them disarm with minimal contact. 3 of them kill, and the other hurts." He, of course, chooses the option that hurts. But it is a good example of how, as a master strategist, in any situation, he is aware of how he could kill, but chooses not to. This is due to him not wanting to go down the path of his villains, and having a desire to see criminals reform, often hiring criminals who are let out of prison to work at Wayne Enterprises. So, like Daredevil, he has a strict moral code, but he is better than Daredevil at sticking to it, earning him the higher slot. Number 7, Thor. Thor is literally the god of thunder. He can bring down lightning, he can smash stuff with his hammer, and he is an amazing warrior with centuries of combat experience. In fact, he was so powerful and arrogant that his father, Odin, sent him to Earth in order to temper his power with humility. For those only familiar with movie Thor, in the comics, Odin sent Thor to Earth with no memories of his life as a god, and made him believe that he was a doctor with a bum leg named Donald Blake. As detailed in the character's first appearance in Journey into Mystery number 83, he spent a decade on Earth learning the value of hard work and perseverance as he dealt with his injured leg and set up his own medical practice. After this decade had passed, Odin implanted a message in Thor's subconscious telling him to go to Norway, where he found his hammer and regained his godly identity. I don't know if this is full-on holding his power back, but the fact that he went through all of that to learn humility and what it meant to be worthy of his powers shows that Thor is very aware of his powers and the proper way to use them. Number 6, Quake. Daisy Johnson is the daughter of the villain Mr. Hyde and a woman with the Inhuman gene. This resulted in her developing the ability to manipulate vibrations. She can use these for a variety of purposes, like causing earthquakes, hence the name Quake. She can also use these powers on a more micro level, such as when she took on the Omega-level mutant Magneto and managed to vibrate his brain until he fell unconscious in New Avengers number 20. On another occasion, when Wolverine was having one of his famous temper tantrums and attacked Nick Fury, she was able to use her vibration powers to cause his heart to explode. So she has the power to take on some of the most notoriously dangerous characters in the Marvel Universe. In fact, she is so powerful that she actually needs to be really careful about how she uses her powers. Obviously, earthquakes can cause a huge amount of collateral damage, so she needs to be careful of that. But the best example of these powers left unchecked is from the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. television show, where Glenn Talbot gets Quake's powers in an alternate timeline and uses them to destroy the planet. So yeah, she needs to be careful. Number 5, Gambit. Remy LeBeau is a powerful and popular member of the X-Men with the ability to tap into an item's potential kinetic energy, making it a dangerous and explosive weapon. He most often uses smaller items like a deck of playing cards, which he will then throw at his enemies. The only real limit on these powers is that he needs to make direct skin contact with whatever item he's charging, hence the cool fingerless gloves. Oh, and also the amount of time it takes him to charge the object, with larger objects taking longer. He also has the ability to hypnotically charm people, making them more likely to do what he wants. Before he was a member of the X-Men, he was a master thief, but found that he was having trouble controlling his powers, causing him to seek out the help of Mr. Sinister, who gave Gambit a surgery, removing part of his brain in order to dampen his powers and make them more manageable. So, while there may be other heroes on this list who are more powerful, none of them took such extreme measures to hold themselves back for the safety of others. Number 4, Northstar.
Oh, Andrew, you talk about Alpha Flight on almost every list. Why don't you talk about more popular teams?
Well, I'll tell you, it's because they're awesome. And because I spent a lot of money collecting every appearance of Alpha Flight over the pandemic, including the issue in Volume 2 that features the first appearance of Big Hero 6, which was a real pain in the butt to find. And talking about them in a work video makes that a tax write-off. Plus, it's my list, and you're literally in my home right now, so I'm gonna talk about who I want to talk about. Jean-Paul Bouvier is the fastest mutant in the Marvel Universe, since Quicksilver isn't a mutant anymore. Northstar is capable of reaching incredible speeds when running or flying. He has a twin sister named Aurora, who is also fast and able to fly, but though she has a greater endurance than her brother, he is the faster of the two. In X Factor Volume 4, Number 7, Northstar and fellow speedster Tommy Shepard are comparing top speeds, and JP reveals that his top speed is 189,299 miles per second, which makes him faster than the speed of light. But he has a very good reason for not reaching his full speed. As he explains to Tommy, that would destroy everything in my path. I could garrote the world in half with one lap if I wished it. It would destroy me physically, not emotionally. I can't breathe at that point because I've created a vacuum and my organs are getting crushed, my bones pulverized into dust. So yeah, Northstar is holding back for good reason. Number 3, Captain Atom. Captain Atom was originally a Charlton Comics character, the same way that Shazam used to be. DC Comics eventually purchased Charlton's collection of heroes, and as a result, he was introduced into the DC universe. In the DC retelling of his origin, Nathaniel Atom was a man sentenced to death for treason. He was offered the opportunity to instead sign up for an experiment designed to test the structural integrity of an alien metal. To test this, they placed Atom in a metal egg and then blasted it with a nuclear explosion. He was vaporized, but much like the Watchmen character he inspired, Dr. Manhattan, he was reconstituted with the metal now covering his skin. Captain Atom can tap into the quantum field and convert the energy into powerful blasts. He can also generate and manipulate matter, such as when he transformed Green Arrow's arrows into butterflies. Captain Atom has to be very careful with his powers, as he is essentially a walking nuke. When he uses his upper power levels, he will start to leak radiation, and if his metal skin is ruptured, he risks detonating like an atomic bomb and destroying whatever city he's in. Number 2, Scarlet Witch. So, Scarlet Witch is one of the most crazy powerful people in the Marvel Universe. One time, she was able to rewrite reality so that mutants were the dominant species on the planet and humans the minority. When Magneto ticked her off, she decided to rewrite reality again, taking away something like 99% of the world's mutant powers by simply saying, no more mutants. She could do that again anytime she wants. I really don't think I need to say anything else on the subject. Number 1, Spider-Man. When I was checking out the previous 2 videos that Amanda did on this subject, which you should of course check out because they're great and also not filmed in an apartment, but I was shocked to learn that Spider-Man didn't make the cut on either installment. So even though he may not be holding back as much as some of the others on this list, I decided to give him the top spot here. Spider-Man is a powerful hero, being able to climb walls, swing from webs, and use his spider sense to avoid danger. But what we're talking about here is his super strength. He can lift several tons at once, as he infamously did in Amazing Spider-Man number 33, when Dr. Octopus trapped him under loads of heavy machinery. But when you have that level of strength, and also have a rule against killing, you have to make sure you pull your punches to avoid taking someone's head off. This was discovered by Doc Ock when he took over Spider-Man's body and became the superior Spider-Man. In one of his first adventures as the new Spidey, Ock fought the Scorpion, and when he punched the Scorpion in the jaw flew clean off. As Doc put it, never knew this body held so much power. All these years, Parker must have been holding back. That really must have made him rethink every time Spider-Man punched him and how that could have turned out.
Number 10, Cyclops. While Cyclops might not be as powerful as some of the others on this list, he pretty much perfectly sums up the idea of a hero who has to hold back his power in order to fight. I mean, that's literally what his costume is for, really. Well, other than that sweet X-Men suit. That is just so we know what team he's fighting alongside. But when it comes to his visor, that is straight up being used to better control and restrain his powers, so that he isn't just optic blasting everyone he looks at or comes up against into next week. Additionally, Cyclops doesn't just use his visor, but also uses his gloves to do this. In his gloves are little buttons that Cyclops can basically push to control the visor, allowing him to open it more or less and change the angle at which it will emit his optic blasts. This is also why Cyclops is known as a master of trigonometry. He needs this knowledge so that he can best utilize his optic blasts, knowing exactly how and when to fire them, and with how much intensity in order to achieve whatever the fight calls for. So whether it's a giant full frontal blast or something a little bit more subtle, Cyclops is always prepared for each and every occasion, as long as he has his trig knowledge intact and his visor and his gloves with him. Since the character first debuted, his powers and their immense strength are something that have also been shown as bothering and plaguing this character, with him even believing that Jean could actually never love him because of his uncontrollable optic blasts. How could she ever love me? I have to wear rose quartz glasses all the time. It's not that big of a deal, psych. Just chill. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not show us you love us by clicking that like button? Number 9, Starfire. Starfire is a character who is immensely powerful, and honestly, we don't talk about her enough on this channel. It's been a minute since we talked about Corey, but let's get into it. The Teen Titans in general are an immensely powerful team, and now that they're no longer teens and are fully grown adults, being known simply as the Titans, they're even more powerful than they once were. Being in control of superpowers as an adult superhero is really, I think, all about knowing when to hold back. Over time, characters have a tendency to only get more powerful and more experienced with age, and Starfire is no exception. In the comics, even pre-Flashpoint Starfire in a fight against Blackfire acknowledges that she is indeed her sister's equal in terms of her power and prowess, saying that the only reason that she has not beaten her sister is because they have never fought as equals, despite being equal to one another. And her sister responds by saying that due to Starfire's caring nature, Corey often holds back, which is basically her weakness. At least, that's how Blackfire sees it. While Blackfire might see this as a weakness, I'm sure Starfire would actually see it as a strength, as it is also what makes her a hero. Sometimes in order to be a hero, you have to know when to restrain yourself, you know what I mean? Number 8, Gentle. Gentle is such a great mutant hero, one we honestly do not talk enough about. His power is so great that it's believed using it could actually result in him losing his life. As a result, Gentle was given vibranium tattoos, which allow him to better contain and control his powers. His powers grant him augmented strength. Despite his mutant name, Gentle can actually become insanely muscular, increasing in size and mass, and we don't actually know the limits of his powers yet, which is why they're also so dangerous. Using them is also really hard on Nesno's body, which could result in his death. Gentle is a hero who, while also a citizen of Krakoa now, is also known for his Wakandan heritage, being actually part Wakandan and part Russian based on his parents' heritage. Initially, it was believed that using his power also caused him great pain and actually resulted in seizures, but we later learned that this was actually more psychological. The vibranium tattoos were therefore helpful for him in regards to using his powers, but were also helpful in the way that they seemed to help lessen his pain. Gentle was also recently a candidate for the X-Men, and one of the mutants you could vote to have elected to the team. He didn't get chosen, but I honestly hope he does get to join the main team in the future, as he's a really neat and unique hero and character. Number 7. The Flash. The Flash might seem like a weird pick for this list, especially as up to this point we've mostly been focusing on characters who have something physical or mental that forces them to hold back their power set. But with the Flash, it's actually all about how powerful he is. He is, I would say, too powerful, which is the issue, especially in regards to his ability to time travel. While Barry Allen as the Flash has traveled back in time and changed things only to learn afterwards of how this was kind of an awful mistake, upturning the entire universe as a result of the change he'd made to basically save his mother, Wally West has seemingly learned from his predecessor's mistakes. For that reason, Wally actually prefers not to get involved when it comes to time travel. He knows that to do so could possibly break the universe, and so has a tendency to be more reserved and much more careful when it comes to racing through the time stream. And even when his friend Hunter Zolomon had begged Wally to use his power to help reverse his paralysis by traveling back in time to prevent it, Wally actually refused. This is what prompted Hunter to become the villain known as Zoom, believing that Wally simply wouldn't help him because he'd just not known enough tragedy in his life, as Hunter had. Zoom believed that in order to make Wally as the Flash a better hero, he would actually have to make him suffer. Number 6. Hellstrom. Hellstrom is actually someone who is similar to another character on this list in regards to his heritage, although the other character I'm comparing him to here is actually not from Marvel, but stay tuned for more on that. Because this point is all about Damon Hellstrom, or Hellstorm, depending on his persona and his mood. Hellstrom is said to be the son of Satan, although it is unknown up to this point if his father is really the true devil or just one of the many demons posing as the devil in the Marvel Universe, including Damon's father, as well as Azazel, who is Nightcrawler's father, and Mephisto, who isn't really known for being a father, but did once have a son named Blackheart. That is a thing that happened, and Blackheart did try to usurp him, so, you know. Hellstrom, as such, has two different personas within him, one that is inherently more good and heroic, and another that is straight up or on the verge of being evil, more influenced by his father's heritage. Sometimes these two personas are kind of given different names as well, Hellstrom or Hellstorm, depending on which persona he is leaning more towards at the time. Sometimes Hellstrom is actually only spelled with one L, and other times he's used these names to sort of like protect his identity, although they are both super similar, so I don't really fully understand how that's supposed to fool anyone. Hellstrom has often struggled with unleashing the full force of his power, and sometimes, in fact I would say often, regrets its ties to hell and the darkness that lies within him. Number 5. Shazam. Shazam, or Captain Marvel as some still refer to him today, is one of the most powerful heroes DC has, and in fact some would argue that when it comes to his fights and contests with Superman, it is he, not Superman, who is often the one who would need to hold back. This is because Shazam's powers come from the gods, and some actually say this is because his powers are kind of magical. The limitless wisdom of Solomon, the strength of Hercules, stamina of Atlas, power and omnipotence of Zeus, courage of Achilles, and speed of Mercury. There is really no limit, or there shouldn't be, to what he can do, and it is because of this sheer power and strength that Shazam often needs to hold back when fighting against his enemies as well. You could also add in the fact that it is Billy Batson's kind heart that often encourages him to hold back against his enemies, preferring to not be so brutal with his enemies or his opponents. I mean, especially if they are his friends or people he looks up to, because, you know, even heroes sometimes fight each other, like in a fight against Supes. At one point, Superman even played host to Captain Marvel and actually marveled at his sheer power. So, you know you're probably going to need to hold back when you're like wowing Superman with your power levels. Number 4. Blue Marvel. If you are powerful enough to knock out Hulk and live to tell the tale, even if he possibly is maybe a less stronger version of the Hulk from the Ultimate Universe, then you probably need to rein in your powers almost all the time. Blue Marvel's powers come from him being a scientist and being forever changed by an experiment gone wrong. Adam Brashear was the project lead on an experimental attempt to manipulate and utilize antimatter. When the negative reactor exploded, it transformed Adam into, in essence, what he was trying to create. He became an antimatter reactor, harnessing antimatter, which basically powered his amazing newfound abilities. Number 3. Superman. I mean, Superman is one of the strongest superheroes DC has to offer. He packs a mean punch, and I mean a mean punch. He often holds back, and not just in regards to strength and holding back actual force, but also in terms of his morality. Superman has a very strong moral code. He won't even hit someone in the back if their back is turned to him. That's how passionate he is about fighting fair. He doesn't hit his opponents when they're down, and he doesn't kill, even though he could very easily permanently defeat his opponents by just straight up ending them. This just isn't Superman's style, and honestly, it's what most people love and respect about Superman. To use his power to annihilate his opponents would actually kind of be sinking to their level. In fact, in realities where he has chosen not to hold back, like Injustice, where he brutally murders the Joker in response to him destroying Metropolis, killing his BFF Jimmy Olsen, and manipulating Superman into killing Lois, Clark becomes a straight up villain and a brutal dictator, which is why he chooses to hold back more often than not in the comics, because he is aware of how power can easily corrupt people. I mean, to be honest, a lot of his villains are people who allow themselves to become corrupted by great power, whether or not they're aware of that. Number 2. Hulk. To say that the Hulk is the strongest there is really not an overstatement. Not only the strongest, but also just one of the most indestructible heroes out there. After all, Hulk is also now immortal, and kinda has been the whole time. And as a result of this, is a character that you do not want to face in a fight. The good news is that Hulk typically doesn't want to kill people, and so he generally does hold back in fights, unless he's going up against someone, that's just about as indestructible as he is. Like, he might not hold back as much when he's fighting someone like the Thing. There are a few reasons that this happens when it comes to Hulk holding back. One, Hulk has actually exhibited he himself has morals. Not all Hulk personas are like this. I mean, look at his alternate version, Maestro, from the future. This version of the Hulk is more devoid of morals and is therefore willing to use all of his strength and power to devastating degrees. The other reason Hulk is often holding back actually has to do with the other persona that's in there with him at the time, Bruce Banner. It's been alluded to before that Bruce can act at times like the Hulk's conscience, but then again, it's also been suggested that Hulk actually might be Bruce's conscience, so kinda depends on the story you're reading as to who is the more heroic between those two personas. Number 1. Raven. Raven is another character that basically sums up the idea of a person who has to hold back and really has no choice in that matter. I mean, we've seen what happens when Raven fully lets go, and it's deadly. Raven in general has to hold back her power in regards to letting herself be fueled by emotion, which is why she generally remains extremely detached. Which also makes her a great counterbalance to someone like Starfire on the Teen Titans team. While Starfire's issue when it comes to holding back is that she has too much emotion, too much empathy for those around her, Raven often prefers to stay closed off from those emotions, knowing that with them could come great power, but at the risk of easily losing control. This is a huge issue for Raven considering her heritage. Raven is related to the demon Trigon, who is immensely powerful and is a version of Satan in essence in the DC universe. While Trigon is her father, he is also her arch nemesis, which means she has to be careful when it comes to possibly opening herself up to his influence at all, as it can and has in the past turned Raven into an extremely dangerous and powerful supervillain. One that could literally end worlds, so yeah.
And at number 10 is Red Hood. Now look, technically, things have changed for Red Hood recently as he has finally agreed to take a less lethal approach to crime fighting, which is why he is at the top of this list. But even though he doesn't bring people to the end of the line anymore, he still leaves them on the brink of the afterlife, and it's debatable whether that is actually necessary all of the time. But outside of his recent developments, Red Hood is an incredibly lethal hero, with almost no qualms about taking the lives of the criminals he faces, and that will be a running theme for pretty much all the heroes on this list. list. Jason Todd began his time as the replacement Robin, but he had nothing new to offer other than being a bit rebellious, so you guys, the fans, got him savagely taken down by the Joker. Good job. It's actually kind of funny though, because when DC brought him back as the Red Hood, everyone absolutely loved him. Now, he's the black sheep of the Bat family, wielding his dual blam blams and constantly going out of his way to subvert the patriarch of that costume family by going far above and beyond the necessary limits. And at number 9 is Rocket. Icon is quite possibly one of the strongest Superman-like characters in DC Comics, and he is, in my opinion, kinda way cooler. But Icon would have never become Icon if it wasn't for Raquel Irvin, a teenage girl who inspired Augustus Freeman IV to use his alien powers to become a hero. And while she had no natural powers of her own, she used an alien-created inertia belt to let her manipulate kinetic energy and to stand by his side as his sidekick, dubbing herself Rocket. As the human sidekick to an incredibly powerful alien superhero, Rocket needs to bring all the power she's got just to keep up. But on the side of being a superhero, Raquel is also an amateur writer, a high school student, and a single teen mom, all while living in the poorest crime-ridden neighborhood in Dakota, Paris Island. She does all that and has the power to punch dudes through brick walls. There was even a time that she absorbed the kinetic energy of falling out of a plane and used it to completely destroy a whole building in one punch. So now you know I wasn't joking about her giving it her all. Number 8, Rocket Raccoon. From one rocket to another rocket. Only this rocket wields absolutely massive out-of-this-world weapons and is a 4-foot tall raccoon with exceptional tactical skill and a pretty creative potty mouth. Rocket the Raccoon has had a fairly messed up past, which I think is a common thread for heroes who don't really hold back. It gives them a bit of a cynical view of the world, most likely. Now Rocket comes from Half-World in the Keystone Quadrant star system. Here, a group of aliens built a massive insane asylum, which then had its funding cut, so they abandoned the project but left the patients with robot stewards to watch over them. Now these robot stewards became sentient thanks to a supernova, and so they genetically engineered the animal companions of these patients to do the job that they were supposed to do, providing them with tons of equipment, weapons, and toy parts. Now this is where Rocket comes from. Eventually, he went off Half-World and became an incredibly adept bounty hunter with Groot, and eventually joined the Guardians of the Galaxy when Peter Quill put them together to face the Phalanx invasion. Being a little tiny raccoon means Rocket has got to compensate, and he does that by being exceedingly good at his job and going completely all out on his enemies. In at number 7, Ghostmaker. In the same vein as Red Hood, Minoka Khan, or Ghostmaker, is another Batman adjacent hero with absolutely zero issue with using his katanas, or pretty much anything he can find, to usher criminals into the underworld. The difference here is that Ghostmaker is practically on the same level of proficiency as Batman himself. Bruce Wayne and Khan have trained under many of the same mentors and at the same time, being rivals since they were in their teens. Where Batman sees crime fighting as a duty that he needs to perform, Ghostmaker sees it as an art, and this difference has caused them to go head to head on multiple occasions and eventually led them to vowing to just stay the heck out of each other's way. As Ghostmaker sees this as an art, he never holds back because he's constantly trying to one-up both himself and everyone else, and I mean honestly, he's really freaking good at it. He has even gone into Gotham to clean up the messes that Batman couldn't handle, which is a controversial statement to make, but we can talk about that in the comments down below. Also, Ghostmaker is kind of hilarious. If you want to know what I mean, go read the comics where he is put in charge of Batman Incorporated. He's ruthless. And at number 6 is Hawkeye. Hawkeye makes this list for a very good reason. He fights alongside the Avengers, the world's mightiest heroes, and as Jeremy Renner made note of in Avengers Age of Ultron, he is a guy with a bow and an arrow. Hawkeye needs to constantly perform at the peak of his game and keep himself in peak physical condition just to keep up with his allies. And all the heroes want him on their side because they know he does actually deliver on that. But that's alongside the fact that he is constantly dealing with angry exes. Also, Hawkeye was originally and occasionally an assassin. Not holding back is part of his job description, which is why he was tasked by Bruce Banner with completing completely assassinating the guy while he was the Hulk by flinging an arrow into his eyeball. Sure, he felt incredibly guilty for this, but Hawkeye, an incredibly capable human, was the one who actually took the life of the Hulk. You can't do that and be holding back. And at number 5 is Moon Knight. Before Mark Spector ever became Moon Knight, he was already not entirely a great person. He was shady for sure, as he was part of the CIA, but also put himself in illegal fights and weapon smuggling schemes, and he was even put on trial for taking out the president of a South American country. He worked as a mercenary, and it was one of the few heroic acts that he did, protecting an archaeologist's daughter, that got him mortally wounded and then revived by the ancient Egyptian god Khonshu in exchange for his servitude. Now, as the Fist of Khonshu, Mark would beat down criminals in the middle of the night while also living 3 other lives with separate personalities. Even though Mark is an Avenger, he consistently takes on his hero work by himself, and constantly goes all out on the criminals he finds. Now, due to his split personalities, it's a little difficult for anyone, even himself, to say what he's actually capable of. Where one personality would never do something, another would do absolutely anything. And then there's also the influence of Khonshu that has made Mark abandon people to go and fight whatever battle Khonshu needs him for. Like when Moon Knight needed to fight the Hell Lord Mephisto when he wanted to take over the world. This street level hero took on a Hell Lord. You see what I'm saying here? But more than that, Moon Knight has been able to actually beat all the Avengers and has even been infused with the Phoenix Force. There's a reason that he's one of my favorite superheroes. Number 4, Midnighter. For Midnighter, the thing that makes me say he doesn't hold back is his use of his survival implants. These implants let Midnighter completely and flawlessly regenerate from any injury and give him a super enhanced immune system, which has allowed the guy to fight with a broken neck and other broken bones, actual holes in his chest, and while being set completely on fire. Not to mention, he's fought after contracting pretty damaging viruses, including AIDS. He can also do this because one of his other implants allows him to turn his pain receptors completely off, allowing him to fight when the pain of his injuries would stop a normal person. It's also meant that he's been able to be completely awake and alert while he was undergoing major surgery, and that's pretty intense. The last of his implants grants him environmental adaptation, which allows him to survive self-sufficiently and without sustenance for indefinite periods of time in places like the vacuum of space. Now take all that and grant it to a guy who has absolutely no issue turning criminals into a bloody pulp, and you've got a recipe for someone who never holds back. And at number 3 is Superior Spider-Man. Now, while it is totally true that Spider-Man himself is known to hold back his power and pull his punches, because you know, greater power, yada yada, great responsibility, that thing, this was not the case when his body was taken over by one of his greatest villains, Dr. Octopus. When Doc took over the body of Peter Parker, he unsurprisingly was not only unaware of the amount of strength Peter actually had, but he was also, unsurprisingly, morally ambiguous with his use of that power. What do I mean by that? Well, the Superior Spider-Man is pretty well remembered for a little thing that happened when he fought against Scorpion and completely punched the villain's jaw clean off of his face, ending his life instantly. There was also the time he went up against Jester and Screwball, 2 unpowered villains who commit crimes just for the thrill of it. For these 2 villains, Spider-Ock, or Spock here, used his fist to turn them into unconscious bloody messes. Spock also led an army of henchmen against Kingpin's base of operations and completely leveled it to the ground, completely destroyed the robot body of the Spider Slayer and then mocks him, and he also completely knocked out Wolverine in just 2 hits for touching him. Hilarious. And at number 2 is Wolverine. If Andrew was here right now, he could probably go on a rant about how Wolverine notoriously, consistently chooses the path of most resistance simply to show how tough he is. And yeah, the guy has an adamantium skeleton, one of the strongest healing factors in comic books, and his powers can't exactly get out of control, so he has almost no reason to hold back at all. He is well known for being one of the wildest, most ferocious fighters in the Marvel landscape. No one wants to face this guy, as almost completely guaranteed to end in their loss, if not their certain demise. In the Age of Ultron story, for example, his very first solution to solve the problem of Ultron was to just go back in time and end Hank Pym's life before he could create the insane robot, which actually would result in a much worse timeline. Or there's Old Man Logan, when the villains coordinated an attack against the heroes and Wolverine thought he completely decimated a large group of villains when he actually took out every single one of the X-Men. The villains took advantage of the fact that Wolverine doesn't hold back to make him destroy his own teammates. It's a well-known fact that James Howlett very rarely holds back. And in at number 1 is the Punisher. I don't even really need to explain this one. Punisher is like the black sheep among all the heroes and even the anti-heroes. He very much toes the line of being a complete villain. Sure, his targets are almost always criminals and villains, but sometimes they haven't been at all. Frank Castle took the life of Captain America as an example. He's famously the Marvel Universe, and he did that while having the same handicap that Hawkeye possesses. The fact that he's just a guy with an absolutely insane arsenal that he is not even slightly afraid to use. And if he ain't using his weapons, then he will use whatever else he has, including his own fists. There was even a time that Frank Castle in the 616 continuity used a steamroller to completely crush and flatten Wolverine in an incredibly overly aggressive comic. What am I saying? Almost every comic with Frank Castle in it is overly aggressive. During Civil War, Frank instantly ended the lives of 2 villains who were on his side as soon as he saw them. He doesn't hold back ever.